Hello, everybody. I think we're live. I am here with, or my name, I should start with, is Rylan Warner. I'm an associate attorney here at Joseph and Hall. I'm here with Luke Neerman, another associate attorney, and Jennifer Howard, another associate attorney at J&H. We are the ones running the show today. Should I just get started with my update? Okay, sure. So I wanted to provide an update about the proposed rule for changes that they want to make to DACA. It's not that big of a change, but they were thinking about making it optional for a person to get employment authorization through DACA. So if you were to get DACA, you wouldn't necessarily have to get employment authorization. I know many of our clients are looking to get DACA so that they can get employment authorization. That way that they can get work in the United States. But the reason why they're proposing to make it an optional process, from what I've seen online, is kind of a safeguard against potential litigation in the future. They want to separate these two parts: the DACA, which is the protection from deportation and basically the ability to stay lawfully in the United States, and the work authorization, which gives you the ability to work in the United States. They want to split those up just in case in the future there is litigation that is trying to get rid of all of DACA. They want to be like, how about we just get rid of the work authorization part, which I know sucks. We would not want to get rid of that aspect of DACA, but we would rather hold on to, yes, you're still legally allowed to stay in the United States. So if we had to get rid of one part of it, they're trying to split these up so that they can just say, okay, how about no more work authorization, but we'll hold on to the legal ability to stay in the United States, and then try to figure out a different way potentially to get work authorization again in the future. But that's not to say that work authorization is going away for DACA recipients anytime soon. That's just the reason why this proposed rule is being proposed to try to be a safeguard against that potential future. But again, it's just a proposed rule, and they are taking comments on it for, I think it's 60 days. So if you want to, you could write a comment about it, or a lot of people are writing comments, giving feedback, saying whether or not they like this change, whether or not they would support it in the future. And once they get all the comments after the 60 days, they'll go and review all the comments and decide whether or not they want to make this rule the actual rule for DACA going forward. Another potential benefit of it is that it could, if you have DACA, but for whatever reason are not interested in getting employment authorization, it would save you a bit of money for the filing fees, because you wouldn't have to file for that employment authorization. You could just get the DACA, the protection from deportation, and that would be that. But so yeah, we'll see if this rule goes into effect. I'm not sure how to feel about it. Do you guys have any feelings about whether you would support that? Do you think it's a good idea to split these two up, or what are your opinions on it?
To be honest, I have not been following the proposed rule, so I'm withholding my opinion at this point.
Good.
I'll echo Luke.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. That was my attempt to make it more of a conversation. Went wonderfully. Luke, do you have an update for us?
Sure. Yeah. I was just going to give a little update on just different options that vulnerable Afghans have who are looking to evacuate Afghanistan. I put a blog post up on our website about this. I think it went up last week. So if you're looking for some more detailed information, there's some good information there, as well as some links to some pages that provide really detailed information on all these different options. But I just wanted to give like a really kind of brief overview on some different options that are available to folks. Obviously, when the Taliban came and took over in Afghanistan, there's lots of folks in really difficult circumstances who are looking to get out of the country. And so just sort of as a baseline, I'll just say it's a really tough situation. There's no easy answer. There's no easy way for a lot of people to leave, unfortunately. A couple options that might be available for different folks, though, is one is a program called the Special Immigrant Visa. So this is available to people who worked for the U.S. government, either with the embassy or the U.S. military, or who are working for a contractor that had funding from the U.S. government. If they worked for one of those entities for at least 12 months, they might be eligible for a special immigrant visa. There's a long application process to get this type of visa. If a person is approved for it, eventually it leads to a green card, permanent residence in the U.S. That's one option available to folks. Another option is immigration just through our normal family-based immigration processes. So, if you are in Afghanistan, if you have a relative, a spouse, a parent, a brother or sister who is a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, there may be options for you to be sponsored or to sponsor your relative who's in Afghanistan and bring them here kind of through those normal family-based immigration processes. A third option that might be available to some folks is trying to access the Refugee Resettlement program. So Refugee Resettlement is available to folks who are in difficult circumstances, who are outside of their country. So this is for people who have already left Afghanistan if they're fleeing because they're being persecuted. This is a refugee resettlement. It's a really long process. And it's also not something that you can directly apply for as an applicant. So generally what it looks like is that someone will leave Afghanistan, they go to a third country. If there's a UNHCR office, or if there's an NGO that's designated by UNHCR to register individuals as refugees, they can be referred by UNHCR or by the NGO to the Refugee Resettlement Program. So there's lots of requirements there, lots of screening. It's a long process. So these are some potential options for folks to get out of Afghanistan and to find protection. Now, the big question with all of this, I've said a couple times, all these processes, they take forever. Like, it's a long application process and it's not guaranteed. And so for folks who are in, immediate danger, who are in hiding in Afghanistan, who are in really difficult circumstances, one option that a lot of people are trying to do is something called humanitarian parole. And what humanitarian parole is permission for someone, it's temporary permission for someone to enter the United States. So parole, it's been used in the past to bring in large groups of individuals who are in difficult circumstances, and they're using it now. So when they did all the evacuation flights in Afghanistan at the end of, starting like mid-August or beginning of August through the end of the month, many of those individuals who are on those evacuation flights, those military evacuation flights, if they weren't U.S. citizens and if they didn't have a green card, in most cases, when those Afghans are getting here to the United States, they were being granted parole at the port. So basically, when they got to the United States, they would be granted parole. So you can get parole at a port of entry, meaning like when you come into the United States, but you can also apply for it proactively before you get here. And so that's the process that a lot of people are trying to navigate right now. So what that looks like is a person who's here in the United States. It can be anybody, and you don't have to have legal status or be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. But anybody who's here in the United States can fill out an application and request parole for someone outside. So usually it's like someone who's here and they have a family member back in Afghanistan, they file an application for parole for their family member. So kind of the components of this application, you have the applicant here, fill out some information about them. You provide some information about the person outside the United States that you're asking parole for. And then in addition to that, you need to have a financial sponsor. And what a financial sponsor is doing is basically saying, it's sort of like a promise, saying that they will provide for this individual if needed, provide financially when they come to the United States. Now, it's important to know it's not a binding contract, but it essentially is like a good faith promise that they'll provide. So that's a component of this application. And then the difficult piece is that there's a filing fee. It's $575 per application. And one application needs to be filed per person. So if you're requesting parole, for example, for a family, you have your brother and his family in Afghanistan, and they have 3 kids. He's married. That's 5 people. That's 5 separate applications that need to be filed. So the filing fee can get a little bit difficult there. There is a fee waiver available. Some folks are in difficult financial circumstances. They might be able to get a fee waiver for that. But it's kind of a complicated packet. Not too complicated. A lot of people are doing it on their own, but there's a lot of information that's requested. And so what happens, you file this application with USCIS, that's United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. If they approve it, then the person who's been conditionally approved for parole, they need to make their way to a U.S. embassy or consulate overseas. And that's the point where I think where a lot of people might have some challenges is actually getting out of Afghanistan. As we know, there's no functioning embassy in Afghanistan anymore. And so people are going to need to find a way to leave the country and to travel to a country that has a U.S. embassy or consulate. At the embassy or consulate, once the person makes it there, they have to fill out an application for it's like an application you fill out just for a visa, ask for some biographic information. They do some background checks, and then if everything goes smoothly, the person will be issued a document that they can use to enter the United States. But parole, even if somebody gets here, it's just temporary permission. And so once somebody gets here, then they'll need to investigate ways to get more long-term status. So that could be something like applying for asylum once they arrive in the country. If they have family members already here in the United States, there might be options for them to get permanent residency through a family member. Maybe someone qualifies for a special immigrant visa, SIV. They could apply for that while they're here in the United States. So there's a couple of different options that people can explore, but that's an option that's out there. I think a lot of folks have filed a lot of these applications, and the vast majority are pending. So we, immigration lawyers across the country, we don't have a great sense yet on how many of these are getting approved. What are your chances if you file an application? It seems a little bit too early to tell, but if you guys have any questions about that, definitely, let us know. We'd be happy to answer those.
Luke, I was wondering if you have heard anything about, obviously this has been seen kind of as a big blunder for the Biden administration. And I think that a lot of people have been saying, what more can we do? What more can your administration do for people that are still stuck in Afghanistan? Have we heard about any rumors of any sort of new process that would be started for this specific situation in addition to humanitarian parole?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't heard of anything. In remarks that the Secretary of State and the Biden administration have made, they've stated things saying that they're committed, to assisting people who want to leave Afghanistan who are at risk to leaving the country. But in terms of like a concrete proposal of a new program or new procedures to facilitate their exit from Afghanistan and their entry to the U.S. I haven't heard of anything.
Yeah, I haven't either. Maybe I'm just naive, but I'm hoping that something will come into being, and there will maybe be some sort of more streamlined process for these applications. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, well, should we get to questions?
I think Jennifer had a quick update.
Did she?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is my I think I've talked about it like every week since it was announced, but just a reminder, tomorrow, October 1st, is the day that the Form I-693, the medical examination for all adjustment of status and consular processing applicants, now it is going to include the COVID vaccine. So there's a list of vaccines that you have to get. And I think, Ryland, you talked about this last week, and then I talked about it like the 2 weeks before. But there's this list of vaccines you have to get. And as of tomorrow, COVID is going to be a required vaccine. So just a reminder, you can go back and watch prior weeks for more details. But basically, if the Form I-693 is completed tomorrow or later, you have to have that vaccine unless you qualify for the waiver. If the form was completed before tomorrow, so today or earlier, and the form is still valid, you don't have to have the vaccine. That said, to enter the United States, this is completely different from the Form I-693. To actually enter on a plane to the United States, starting in November, all foreign travelers will have to provide proof of being fully vaccinated. And the exceptions may be different than the exceptions for the waiver for the medical exam. And so I know in our office, we're starting to get interviews scheduled in certain countries. And we have really short notice for those interviews, like, maybe 3 weeks. And so we're recommending that all of our clients get vaccinated if you're going to get vaccinated, so that when you do get scheduled for your interview, you don't have to worry about it. You're already there. Yeah. So that's my reminder, my update.
I was also, because I know that we have talked about this before, and previously it's been required for people 12 and above, but there's been a lot of news stories about Pfizer submitting data to the FDA to get the vaccine approved for children ages 5 to 11. So that age requirement might change if the approval is given by the FDA that children 5 through 11 are approved to get it, then it might be required for them as well for immigration purposes. So just keep that in mind. That could change at some point here. Okay, now time for questions. Okay. We have a question from Danny Hasisa, and he asks if our firm helps with I-140 RFEs. He needs a second opinion with experience letters, his experience letters, and USCIS is asking for in an EB2 perm base I-140 RFE. And I can answer this. Yeah, we definitely would be able to help you out with that. We have Zach at our firm. He does a lot of the employment work. I don't know. Do you guys do I-140 RFE work, or is that mostly in Zach's field? I do a little myself as well.
Yeah, you guys.
Okay. Yeah, so if you want to schedule a consultation with us, we would definitely be willing to talk with you, and I think be able to help you out with that. Okay, next question. We have Aziz saying, hello, guys. Hi, Aziz. Hope you're doing well. Mike Holtman is asking for any Manila news. He is a K1 in Ramirez. Zach is the lead attorney on Ramirez. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Ramirez, I don't think we have any news at this point. So the government filed a motion to dismiss. We responded to that. So it's been briefed, and I believe it's before the judge right now. A decision, unless you guys are aware of new information on that.
No, I haven't heard any big updates for Ramirez either. So I think we're still waiting.
Yeah, the difficult part, once a motion to dismiss has been briefed, it's before the judge. We're just waiting for a decision, and there's no timeline where the judge has to make a decision, which I know is really difficult. you all are in difficult circumstances waiting. So we're hopeful it won't be too long.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was the last question. Not many people wondering about things this week, I guess. So, okay. I guess that's it for this week. Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Jennifer. It's always a pleasure. Look forward to doing this again next week. I'll see you guys next time.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.